A poor girl paid the bus fare for a millionaire with her last coins. What he did next surprised everyone. Before we begin the story, leave a comment and let us know which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. He had built an empire from silence. Hotels, wealth, prestige, a name that opened every door. Stone. But tonight, not even the back door of a city bus would let him in. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from disbelief. No phone, no wallet, no watch. Just the cold metal of a bus pole and the scent of worn leather seats. "Sir, no money, no ride," the driver said, not even looking up. The man in the crumpled shirt, Ethan Stone, didn't argue. He couldn't. This wasn't just humiliation. It was exposure. He had built a fortress with credit cards and glass towers. And now, one robbery had turned him into a nobody. People stared. Most looked away. Except her. A girl in a second-hand uniform, hair pulled back, shoes frayed, and eyes that saw pain without flinching. She stepped forward. "I'll pay for him." The coins clinked louder than any applause he'd ever heard. She didn't ask his name, didn't know he was one of the richest men in the city. But he would never forget hers. And she had no idea that a single bus fare was about to change the rest of her life. Not because of what he gave her, but because of what she gave him. A beginning. Julia Reyes lived on edges. The edge of poverty, the edge of exhaustion, the edge of forgetting who she used to be. Every morning started with two choices: pay the electric bill or buy enough groceries to last until Friday. She never chose for herself. At 23, she carried more than her share of weight. Dishes in her arms, calluses on her hands, and her mother's fading hope resting on her back. She worked the closing shift at Daisy's Diner. Blue uniform, greasy apron, a smile worn more often than not, though it rarely reached her eyes anymore. Julia didn't complain. She just counted coins. Every cent mattered, even the 4 quarters she had kept in her jacket for emergencies, until the night she saw him. Ethan Stone didn't look like a millionaire that night. He looked broken. But rewind just 24 hours, and you'd see a man whose name was printed in gold. Stone Hotels. The kind of place with crystal lobbies, silent butlers, and champagne for apologies. He was good at pretending to care, smiling at board meetings, making promises to shareholders. But behind the tinted windows and spotless floors, Ethan felt nothing. He didn't know how to rest, didn't know how to listen, didn't know how to be loved. Because love had never knocked on his door. It had only ever asked him to earn it. His world was clean, predictable, cold. Until the night fate robbed him, literally, and the girl with soft eyes handed him a second chance wrapped in spare change. They were never supposed to meet. But the universe doesn't ask permission when it's time to rearrange everything. Now, the girl who could barely afford her own ride was the reason he wasn't stranded. And the man who could have bought the bus company sat 3 rows ahead, wondering what it meant to owe someone something that wasn't money. Julia didn't notice the eyes watching her from the reflection of a cracked window. She just looked out at the city, as if it still owed her an answer. And Ethan? He leaned back, holding on to a feeling that made no sense to him. Gratitude. Real. Quiet. Terrifying. 2 lives. 1 act of kindness. And neither of them knew yet. The ride had just begun. The next morning, Ethan awoke to the faint taste of embarrassment still on his tongue. He sat at the edge of his penthouse couch, leather too expensive to feel comfortable, still in yesterday's clothes. No assistant, no schedule, no driver waiting downstairs. Just the echo of a stranger's voice. You don't have to do that. And yet, she did. He couldn't stop thinking about her, her hands, worn but steady, her voice firm but gentle. She hadn't recognized him. That was the part that haunted him. He had built his life on recognition. Rooms fell quiet when he entered. Waiters remembered his drink. People laughed before his punchlines landed. But she didn't care. She only saw a man need. And that was what made Ethan pick up his phone and say something he hadn't said in years. James, I need a favor. Across town, Julia stirred sugar into her coffee like it owed her something. The morning rush hadn't started yet. Sunlight poured through the foggy diner windows, catching the dust in the air like fireflies. She hadn't told anyone about the bus incident, not because it was a secret, but because it didn't feel real. The man's eyes had lingered when he said thank you, like he meant it, like he hadn't said those words in a long, long time. Julia shook it off. She had dishes to wash, orders to take, and rent due in 5 days. But outside, just past the corner of 5th and Meadow, a man in tailored clothes and hesitation stepped through the diner's door. He didn't belong there. The diner smelled like burnt toast and broken dreams. He smelled like cedarwood and apology. When Julia turned and saw him standing there, coat slightly wrinkled, coffee already in his eyes, she blinked. You, she said softly, more question than greeting. I owe you a cup of coffee, he replied. And just like that, the past and the present collided. She raised an eyebrow. You found me. I looked, he admitted. Why? He paused, hands in his pockets. Because last night, you reminded me what it feels like to be seen. The air shifted. Julia stared at him, unsure if she should be flattered or concerned. I'm not looking for anything, he added quickly. I just wanted to return the gesture. Her fingers tightened around the coffee pot. You think coffee makes us even? No, he said. But maybe a conversation gets us closer. Something about the way he said it. No arrogance, no charm, just truth, made her pour 2 cups. She slid one toward him and leaned on the counter. You've got 5 minutes. He smiled. That's more than I deserve. Neither of them noticed how slowly time moved after that. The seconds stretched, the silence spoke, and between one sip and the next, the contract between 2 strangers was quietly signed, not in ink, but in intention. Ethan came back the next day. Same stool, same time, same awkward smile. Julia pretended not to notice. She moved behind the counter like she always did, quick, efficient, a little too busy for anything personal. But when she poured him coffee without asking, he knew something had shifted. Am I becoming a regular? He asked. You're becoming predictable, she replied, not looking up. He smiled. She didn't. The game had begun. He kept returning, day after day. Each morning a new attempt, a compliment, a question, a story. Each morning the same result. A polite nod, a half smile, A coffee cup slid across the counter. Julia wasn't cold. She was cautious. She didn't trust people who showed up suddenly and smiled too easily. She especially didn't trust men who smelled like privilege and walked like the world owed them nothing, but secretly believed it did. She couldn't figure him out. Some days he looked lost, other days too composed, and always watching her like he was searching for something in her that she didn't know she had. At first, it annoyed her, then confused her. Eventually, it started to scare her, not because she thought he'd hurt her, but because a small part of her wanted him to stay. Ethan noticed everything: the way her ponytail loosened near the end of her shift, how she touched her necklace when she was tired, how her smile changed depending on who walked through the door. He told himself he was just curious, but curiosity doesn't make you dream about someone's laughter. Still, no matter how many times he showed up, she never asked his last name, never Googled him, never hinted at knowing who he really was. And that unsettled him more than anything, because it meant the connection was real. He tried to keep the walls up, tried to keep the conversations light: coffee, weather, city noise. But her eyes asked deeper questions, and he wasn't ready to answer them. One day, Julia dropped a plate. It shattered, loud and sudden. Ethan flinched. She didn't. She bent down, swept the pieces, and whispered to herself, "Some things aren't worth fixing." He heard her, and for the rest of the day, he couldn't breathe properly. That night, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse again. But something had changed. It didn't feel big anymore. The view of the skyline didn't comfort him. The silence didn't protect him. The wine tasted hollow. He realized with a chill that the only time he'd felt at peace this week was in a greasy diner with a girl who never asked for anything. And that terrified him, because in his world, love was a contract. And Julia? She didn't follow contracts. She followed instinct. He knew it was only a matter of time before she asked the question he didn't want to answer. Who are you, really? And when she did, would he be ready to tell the truth? Or would he let silence answer for him? The rain came on a Tuesday. Not heavy, not loud, just soft enough to make people slow down, just cold enough to make memories surface. Julia stood by the diner window during her short break, cradling a chipped mug in both hands. Steam rose. Her shoulders didn't. Outside, the city blurred under gray mist. Inside, Ethan sat quietly at the counter. No jokes today. No questions. Just two people in the same space pretending silence wasn't saying everything. She had started noticing things. How he stirred his coffee, counterclockwise, never in a rush. How he lingered after she smiled, like it mattered more than it should. How his eyes looked familiar. Not in the way a celebrity did, in the way someone does when they're hiding. She found it the next day. His wallet, left behind on the counter. Brown leather. Slim. Too clean to belong to someone struggling. She opened it without thinking. No cash. Just a name. Ethan Stone. Her heart stopped. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Stone Hotels, the billionaire family with resorts across the globe. Julia stared at the ID. The picture was him. The name was real. She set the wallet down like it had burned her. The door swung open. He had come back. Their eyes met. And she knew. He knew she knew. Ethan took a breath, stepped closer. I wasn't hiding who I am, he began, just hoping I could be someone else, even for a little while. Julia didn't say a word. He picked up the wallet. I should have told you. Still, nothing from her. I didn't want to lose this. He gestured between them. If I told you I was Ethan Stone the first day, would you have paid my fare? She crossed her arms, defensive. I didn't pay your fare because of who you were. I paid it because you needed help. His voice softened. And that's exactly why I didn't tell you. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. La Dolce Vita, she had whispered once, the name of the bakery she dreamed of owning. Sweet life. But tonight, everything felt bitter. He hadn't lied. But he hadn't been honest either. Trust wasn't about confessions. It was about timing. And he had waited too long. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in the back seat of a town car, watching the rain trace rivers down the window. For years, he'd hidden behind numbers, suits, polished shoes. But Julia had made him feel human. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Because he wanted more. Not just of her smile or her voice. He wanted the life she believed in. A life built with hands, not inheritance. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a napkin. Her handwriting. La Dolce Vita. She had scribbled it once, after telling him about her dream. He had kept it. He pressed the napkin between his palms like a prayer. Tomorrow, he would go back. Not as Ethan Stone, but as the man who remembered the taste of her coffee, and the warmth of her kindness, and the way she left the porch light on, even when she was angry. The next morning, Julia walked into the diner and found something on her station. A box. Inside, a single worn-out coin, 1 quarter, and a note. You paid for me once. Let me return the favor. Let me help you build the sweet life. E. She closed the lid slowly, heart pounding. The coin meant nothing, but also everything. Because it wasn't about the money. It was about starting again. Not just for him, but maybe for her too. It was supposed to be a regular day. Julia tied her apron tighter than usual. Maybe it helped keep her heart from falling out. The box with the coin sat untouched in her locker. Too meaningful to throw away. Too confusing to carry. She wasn't angry, but she wasn't ready to forgive. Forgiveness is soft, and she still felt sharp. When Ethan walked into the diner, something had changed. His eyes were softer. His suit was simpler. His smile, unsure. He waited at the counter like always. But this time she didn't bring the coffee. Instead, she folded her arms and leaned against the wall. You really thought a quarter would fix this? He looked up, not surprised, almost relieved. No, he said, but I hoped it would start something. She stepped closer. I don't need your money, Ethan. I know. Then why try to buy your way back in? He sighed. Because I don't know any other way. That stopped her. She wasn't expecting that kind of honesty. I don't know how to show up without offering something, he continued. All my life, people only stayed when I gave them something. Power, status, security, never myself. Julia stared at him. Then maybe it's time you try. The conversation died there. But the silence carried more weight than either of them knew what to do with. She returned to her tables. He returned to pretending not to watch her. That night, the real break came. Julia was locking up when she heard the bell ring one last time. She turned. There he was. But not like usual. Wet, disheveled, out of breath. "I need to talk to you." She stayed by the counter, unmoved. "I just came from my father's office," he said, voice shaking. "He wants me back. Wants me to sign a deal that would put me on the board permanently." Julia raised an eyebrow. "So go. That's your world." "No," he said. "Not anymore." "Why not?" He hesitated. "Because that world never felt like mine. Until I met you." She blinked. "You don't even know me." "I do. More than I know myself most days." "That's not love," she shot back. "That's projection." Ouch. He stepped forward, voice rising. "I gave up everything." "No," she said, holding her ground. "You gave up something for yourself. Not for me." Silence. Heavy. Honest. She looked at him with eyes not of anger, but truth. "I don't want to be someone's rebellion, Ethan. I want to be someone's choice." He looked like he'd been hit. Julia picked up her keys. "This isn't about you proving you can be poor." She opened the door. "It's about proving you can be present." And with that, she stepped out. The door swung slowly behind her. Click. He stood there, alone in the darkened diner, with the coin still in his pocket. And for the first time since losing everything, he realized he might lose her too. Outside, Julia walked fast. She hated crying in public. But tonight, the tears came. Not because she didn't love him, but because she did. And that was the problem. Because love, when it arrives too soon, too loud, without listening, can feel like pressure instead of peace. Across the city, Ethan stood on the roof of his building, not near the edge, just far enough to see the skyline blur through rain and regret. He had tried to escape the life he was born into, but maybe he had brought it with him. In his need to control, to fix, to buy time with grand gestures. He hadn't realized Julia didn't want a rescuer. She wanted a partner, and he didn't know if he could be that. Yet. That night, they both fell asleep with the same question on their lips. Did I just ruin the best thing that ever happened to me? Neither of them had the answer, but tomorrow might bring one. Morning came slowly. Julia stood in front of her mirror, her reflection unchanged, but everything inside her felt different. She hadn't slept. Not really. The words they'd exchanged echoed louder than the city outside. Her voice had been strong, but her heart was tired. She didn't regret telling him the truth, but she hated that it hurt them both. What if she had been too harsh? What if she had been the one who didn't listen? At the diner, the world moved on. Customers came and went. Coffee dripped. Plates clattered. But Julia moved like a ghost through her shift, half there, half searching. And he didn't show up. Not that day, or the next. Something was missing. And it wasn't just the empty stool at the counter. It was the way his presence used to ground her. Like even in his mystery, he had been the one person not asking anything from her. And now, silence. She hated how much she noticed. Across the city, Ethan sat in his father's office, not as a son, but as a man trying to unlearn everything he was taught. "I'm not coming back," he said. His father didn't flinch. "You think you're walking away from an empire." Ethan leaned forward, calm. "I'm walking towards something that finally makes sense." His father stood. "Because of some girl?" "No," Ethan replied. "Because of who I am when I'm with her." The silence between them was old, stale, a familiar wound. "I'm not you," Ethan added softly. "No," his father said. "You're weaker." "Maybe," Ethan said, standing. "But I'm finally honest." He turned and walked out, and didn't look back. That evening, Julia stepped out into the cool air, clutching her coat tight. She didn't expect to see him, but she hoped. And hope can be cruel when it grows wild. She turned the corner, and there he was, standing beneath the broken street lamp that always flickered, waiting. Not with flowers, not with a speech, just with his hands in his pockets and eyes that said, "I'm here. If you'll have me." Julia paused, heart loud, steps quiet. She walked slowly toward him. He didn't move. "I don't have answers," he said, "but I left everything. I walked away." She looked at him, unsure whether to cry or run. "Why?" she whispered. "Because I want to build something, not escape something. And I want to build it with you." She blinked. "Even if I don't believe in fairy tales?" He smiled. "Then let's build something real instead." Silence, then. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he said. They stood there, strangers again, but this time with history. And after a few seconds that felt like minutes, she stepped closer. Not much, just enough to reach his hand. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. She didn't forgive, but she leaned in. And that was enough. Later that night, they sat on the hood of his car, parked by the waterfront. Not touching, just talking. About everything they didn't say before. She told him about her father's illness, about the day she almost dropped out of school. He told her about the weight of wealth, about how he hadn't laughed, really laughed, since he was 16. And under the stars, without trying, they stitched something fragile together. Understanding. When he dropped her off, he didn't kiss her. He just said, "Tomorrow?" And she nodded. No promises, no fireworks, just a beginning that finally felt earned. She walked inside, fingers brushing the doorframe, heart whispering something she hadn't said in years. Maybe this time, it's real. The coastal wind carried a different kind of silence. Not empty, not cold, but filled with the sound of beginnings. Julia stepped off the train, fed with a suitcase in one hand and uncertainty in the other. The small seaside town felt like a postcard she had never dared to send herself. And there he was, waiting beside an old Jeep, sleeves rolled, smile warm, but careful. "You came," Ethan said. "I'm not sure why," she admitted. He nodded. "Me neither, but I'm glad." They walked the land together. An abandoned estate, a crumbling hotel, shutters hanging loose, vines swallowing corners. "This is it?" she asked. He grinned. Our future bakery is somewhere between the broken tiles and the rats. She laughed for the first time in days. I should have brought boots. You'll need them, he said. For the next few weeks, they worked. Not as lovers. Not yet. But as two people slowly choosing the same dream. They painted. They planned. She made lists. He made calls. She taught him how to brew real coffee. He taught her how to read contracts. And somewhere between late-night takeout and the scent of drywall and flour, they stopped hiding. One night, after sanding floors for hours, Julia sat cross-legged in the middle of the future cafe, covered in dust, hair tied up, sweat across her brow. Ethan walked in holding two mismatched mugs. Not diner coffee, he warned. I'll survive. They sipped. They sat. He looked at her, tired, radiant, real. I've been thinking, he said. She looked up. I don't want to build a future where we're still asking if we belong. I want one where we decide we do. She smiled softly. And what does that future look like? He set down his mug, reached into his back pocket, and pulled out something small. Her heart stopped. Not a ring. A key. To the front door, he said. You design the space, you choose the name, I'll build around it. Julia blinked. You're serious? I'm not building a life you fit into. I want to build one we fit together. She didn't cry. Not yet. But she reached for the key with trembling fingers. You better not mess up my floor plan, she said. He laughed. You're the boss. She tucked the key into her pocket, like a vow. Days passed. Then weeks. The hotel began to breathe again. So did they. They made mistakes, argued over color palettes, shared dreams and fears over half-eaten pastries. One night, as they walked along the beach, Julia stopped. The moonlight hit her just right, wind-swept, steady. I never thought I'd get here, she said. Me neither. I mean, here, with someone, sharing anything, trusting. He nodded. I know. She turned to him. I think I love you. He didn't answer with words. He just pulled her in and kissed her like the world wasn't watching. And for once, it wasn't. Opening day arrived with nerves and fresh paint. Locals trickled in. Tourists wandered. The smell of fresh bread met sea breeze. People complimented the view. But all Ethan could see was her. Behind the counter, in her element. Alive. He leaned on the doorframe, hands in his pockets, like he did that first day at the diner. Only this time she saw him, and she smiled first. Later, after the rush, they sat outside, feet up, hearts light. I was wrong, she said. About what? You asked once if I believed in fairy tales. He smiled. You said no. She looked out at the ocean. Turns out, I just needed the right story. He reached for her hand. And for the first time, no questions remained between them. Only the quiet, undeniable answer. Yes. The sign above the bakery door read, La Dolce Vita, painted in Julia's handwriting, hung by Ethan's hands. Beneath it, they stood every morning, before the sun, before the noise, watching the world wake up. She always unlocked the door. He always carried the first tray. It was their quiet rhythm, the kind that doesn't ask for applause. just presence. Inside, the tables filled slowly. Locals brought flowers. Travelers brought stories. Children smeared chocolate on their cheeks. Julia moved through it all like she was born for it. Apron smudged, eyes alive. Every pastry an offering. Every smile real. Ethan managed the hotel next door, but he always came in for his coffee, still sat at the counter, still waited for her to notice. And she always did. One afternoon, a little girl dropped her cookie. She began to cry. Julia knelt down, handed her a fresh one. Ethan watched from the doorway. "That's who she is," he whispered to himself. Not the woman who saved a millionaire with a bus fare, but the woman who never let anyone leave feeling small. That night, they sat on the rooftop. The sea glittered below, the stars above. She leaned into his shoulder, quiet. "Do you think this will last?" she asked. He didn't pretend to know, but he reached for her hand. "If we keep choosing it, every day, then yes." She closed her eyes, not because she was tired, but because in that moment, she didn't need to see the future. She could feel it. Months passed, then seasons. The bakery flourished. So did they. They hosted weddings, birthday parties, mornings that began with quiet coffee and ended with laughter. Every year on the anniversary of the bus ride, Ethan left a single coin on the counter. Always the same one. The first one she gave. He never explained. She never asked. But every time she saw it, her heart whispered, "This is why." One evening, long after closing, Ethan locked the door. Julia swept the floor, humming. He came behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned back into him, still humming. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "What?" "Walking away from all of it." He kissed the back of her neck. "I didn't walk away." She turned to face him, confused. "I walked toward something." She smiled. "Me?" He nodded. "You." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying salt and hope. Inside, two lights remained on, one over the counter, one above their bed. Both soft, both warm. The kind of light you leave on when you're not afraid of being found anymore. And in a town by the sea, a girl who once counted coins, counted blessings instead. The sweet life, real, earned, shared, and just beginning.